right, good evening, everybody. It's October 5th, time for our September wine club tasting. So a little bit late, but appreciate the patience. A lot of things going on. It's sometimes hard to get out those wines right in the middle of the month, but we're really excited about this one, Celtic Crossroads, Ancient Wines of Gaul. So this was a little bit of a look back to one of our previous clubs that some of you may have received, which was the Wines of Caesar's Gaul, where we sort of explored in detail the Caesar's De Bello Gallico, and we allude to that a little bit in this club, but we really wanted to do something that kind of took this topic from a little, as much as was possible, from the perspective of the Celts themselves, not so much from the Romans, and kind of looking at this, France, which is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, wine producing country in the world, kind of in exploring its history from the indigenous peoples who were there, or who immigrated there before the Romans, kind of up through the Roman period, and then of course there's a history after that, which we'll save that for about 100 subsequent clubs. But we thought this was really fun, getting into some of these more obscure Celtic tribes like the Bituriges, Vivisci, and the Carnutes, and the Helvetians, and some of the other ones. So
one of the great benefits of being an AWG member is, the Sunday crossword. I mean, we're equipping you guys for just about anything that you could possibly ask for. So you're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah. So, we'll get you in there. I wanted, before we start, just for those of you who didn't get the write-ups, or even those who did, just to kind of orient ourselves here in space. So we have this map is actually more or less a rendition of Caesar's map, his textual map of Gaul, where you have the Belgians, the Celts that he calls the Gauls, but he says they in their own language call themselves the Celts, sort of in central France, the Aquitani down to the left, and then this territory, the Narbonensis, is actually Gallia Narbonensis, which we talk about a little bit in the write-ups, which became a Roman territory quite early on. And then anything Gallia Cisalpina is, of course, Italy. That was part of Roman territory already by this period here. So we'll be exploring the Aedui, who are here, the Bituriges, the Vivisci, who are over here, and then some of these tribes up here in kind of central France, which is now the Loire Valley. So it kind of gives you a sense. And then our special offer actually was 2 wines from Switzerland, which was the territory of the Helvetii. It's kind of interesting. They came in through earlier on. They picked some migrating tribes from up north, like Denmark, northern Germany, picked them up in some earlier raids into Gaul, and they ended up over here with this territory here in the kind of Bordeaux area. It's really interesting. And they killed a Roman consul, sent the army under the yoke, and Caesar actually alludes to that later on in his text. So they're in, they're Helvetians, but in Switzerland, but they're migratory and at different periods as well. So, and actually the sort of casus belli that Caesar gives for going into Gaul in the first place was that the Helvetians were looking to migrate again out of their territory. So anyway, we have those wines as well for those of you who picked those up. The special offer wines, kind of cool connection there as well. So I think we'll jump in right away without further ado here. I think, Dana, are you going to walk us through this one?
I'm going to do number 1. Yeah, I'll kind of lead us out the gate. They make me go first because they said I talk too long, so that way I can get.
No one's ever said that, Dana.
No, that's true. I think back to the Helvetii. One of the things I really love about that entire episode is that part of the fear was that if the Helvetii moved, all of a sudden Germanic tribes would be on the borders of Rome, right? So this fear of the Germanic tribes. So keep your eyes open. That's another club topic for another time. We haven't quite waded into, but we've been talking about for some time now. So anyway, you guys have the club. You guys got questions about it? By all means, throw it up in the chat. Let us know. We can talk about history, but we're here to talk about the wine. We're here to try some of these wines, and what a fantastic one right out of the gate. This Philippe Tessier 2022 Cheverny Blanc. We carried these wines when we used to work in the shop all together, and these wines, Philippe Tessier's wines, are just absolutely stunning. Domaine Tessier was founded back in 61 Philippe's father, Roger, actually founded it. And then 20 years later, Philippe took it over. It's actually now being handed down. We think it's Simon.
I think it's Simon.
Simon,
Yeah, it's the son.
His son is now picking up again, now 40 years later. And just consistent, beautiful, beautiful wines. These wines, the wine that's in your glass right now, this Cheverny, it's 3 of the typical grapes allowed for the Cheverny AOC. So it's a combination of Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, and Bourgois. I was asking Ryan earlier, I was actually trying to like read through Philippe's text sheet in French before, and I'm like, oh, it's the Sauvignon Blanc pour le fruit. It's the Chardonnay pour le grass. I'm like, grass, like fat, right?
Yeah.
And totally right, because this thing goes through malolactic fermentation. It's 100% organic, handpicked. They're not biodynamic, but they are NatCert, I think. So EcoCert, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, EcoCert. And that really shows in just the quality and attention that's paid to a really beautiful, well-rounded white. 80% Sauv Blanc, 15% Chardonnay. The Orbois is a really interesting grape in and of itself. In the last century, Orbois was actually the 3rd largest planted grape in and around the Cheverny region. And for those of you who have had a chance to travel through the Loire, if you've been to Chambord, if you've been to near Chambord, and Chenonceau also is nearby. And this is actually a really special place because Domaine Tessier is actually sandwiched between the Loire and the forest of Cheverny. And so it kind of creates this cool climate, this cool microclimate that allows the grapes to really, really shine without becoming overly heated in the increasingly hot French sun. Sandy clay soils, they 100% spontaneous fermentation in the glass. Sits, I'm sorry, not in the glass, it's in stainless steel. Okay. Stays in that stainless steel for another 6 months and also shares a little time in neutral oak, where it does go through mallow. And we can start tasting this. I learned, Ryan and I were talking about this term sapide, which is a term that you hear often in France, but one that actually the origins of the word they're not French, right?
No, I mean, I'm sure it's something in Latin. Like yes, in English it's sapidity.
Was it the opposite of insipid then? Is that the?
I don't know if there's actually it's SAPID, so sapidity. But it's just this word that I was mentioning to Dana that I would hear all the time from French winemakers, like, yes, this wine is very sapid, and I'd be like, what is it? What is this word? And really just means like tastiness, like flavorfulness.
Yeah, it must be the opposite, because insipid means without flavor, right?
Without
flavor. I guess, yeah. I didn't know
there was like a positive version of that.
2 crossword.
There we go.
Yeah,
right there, exactly.
But yeah, so I mean, what Dana's saying is like, there's this kind of the Sauvignon Blanc, you get the fruit, the Chardonnay, you get the Gras, the fat, which is like you get some of that texture, and then the Orbois, like Philippe, I don't think says this specifically, but this is like it had this kind of like soft sort of suppleness, kind of tastiness, flavorfulness.
Vivacité.
Vivacity.
Vivacité. Yeah, in his write-up, his website from 1984 when he took over, 81. But actually, no, it does spell out in the glass. And what I really like about this wine is that I think about all the different ways that I could enjoy this wine. Right. Let's kind of go through and do our tasting here. Really lovely. I get white flowers on the nose. It's kind of honeysuckle, and on the palate, not overly acidic, like we were talking about. Definitely, right. You can taste the Sauv Blanc. It's not grassy, but and the malolactic fermentation that this goes through. Having Chardonnay in it as well, but it's just a really well balanced, beautiful wine, and I think a lot of that actually has to go back to the vinification practices and the time that's spent handpicking these grapes, putting them through a really thoughtful winemaking process, and the results in your glass. So Dana,
for those who don't know the term malolactic fermentation, you mind like explaining that really quickly? And then I was also kind of wondering, maybe a question for Ryan, like what percentage of Sauvignon Blanc in France actually is made with malolactic?
It's a
Very
question.
little,
Yeah.
very little.
Yeah, 'cause
Sauvignon.
it's something you get in California, Sauvignon Blanc.
Yeah, you'll see it in Napa and Washington State. So Sauvignon Blancs. I say Napa. I should say California Sauvignon Blancs and Washington State Sauvignon Blancs typically are the only two places I really see it really going through malolactic fermentation typically. With some exceptions, some rare exceptions in France, as well as with like with oak, like a prominent oak influence as well. You'll see it in not in Sancerre, but you'll see it sometimes from other winemakers in the Loire who want to give a little more of that full fleshy kind of sometimes a little more tropical tone to it, which you see here. So malolactic fermentation, just to if you don't mind, so like the process is converting the more tart malic acid to lactic acid. I mean lactic, lactose. I mean some of you are probably all familiar with are fully familiar with this, but again, lactose, think of like lactic acid relating to dairy, softer, creamier sort of texture. So again, with this wine, that kind of fleshier sort of like texture on the palate, that is, I would say, largely due in part to the malolactic fermentation. That gives it that kind of more mid palate weight on there.
There's a reason we call buttery Chardonnay buttery, right? Yeah, it's that exactly.
No, literally, yeah.
As Philippe would say, that grass, that fattiness, that roundedness in the
Yeah, I mean, I've had a couple like Sauvignon Blancs from California in a blind tasting that had malo, and I was like, it was impossible to tell that it's Sauvignon Blanc because you're looking for all those kind of green, like really acidic kind of green flavors, pepper and green pepper and everything, and it's like usually that just kind of gets buried under that, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it really depends on what you're trying to coax out of the Sauvignon Blanc. Sauvignon Blanc is a grape that also is highly susceptible, like other grapes, but I would say you just see this in practice more so. Susceptible to having its character be affected by how heavily you crop it. So how much fruit you leave on the vine. So if you're cropping it like at a super high amount of fruit, which would be like 8 or 9 tons per acre, which is like, it's crazy amounts of fruit on the vine. You will get a lot of those kind of just like big, juicy, fruitier flavors. And then when you crop it down to like, let's say like 1 to 2 tons an acre, that's actually, and I'm told this is kind of paradoxically, right? Because you almost get a little bit lighter, more like elegant expression. You would think with like more fruit, there's like less concentration to go around, but apparently, and again, I've been told this by a number of winemakers, there's kind of this paradoxical relationship Sauvignon Blanc has, where when you have a big production vineyard, you can get these big, bold flavors. And if you want that like Sancerre, like very like precise, more on the kind of grass, more on the mineral tone, you crop it down, and you have a lower crop. So this is getting, obviously kind of nerdy on the viticulture side of things, but it is relevant in this case, where Philippe's yields, his crop load is typically quite low. He's in a cooler region, and so he's doing a very good job of making sure that it doesn't get to those just kind of like big blown out sort of flavors. You still have the refinement of the Sauvignon Blanc showing in this wine.
He's got only 23 hectares, I think. Is this full? Yeah,
which is right around 50 acres. 50-ish acres. Yeah. 2.2, I think.
Mike has a question. Mike asks, on opening, this had an odd aftertaste, which has now disappeared. Any comments? And I'm wondering, what about natural winemaking?
Yeah, so this is definitely a wine that I would say would fall into the camp of a natural wine. This is a wine that uses very low sulfur. This is a wine that uses practices, in the vineyard and in the cellar that are I would describe as more like minimalist.
Unfiltered, unfined.
Yeah, unfined, unfiltered. I also find with this wine that like when I first open it, like takes a little bit to kind of open up, to loosen up, to have kind of this the effect of oxygen take place on the palate, and I should say on the wine on the palate, where sometimes those kind of aftertastes where you can sometimes get a little bit more of there sometimes can be a little bit of this like bitterness or something like that. Like this is also 2022, so the wine is relatively young. I wouldn't say it has any, for me, there's no bottle shock or anything like that. It's drinking really well and it's drinking nicely, but it's something that I think white wines benefit from air too. This is something that I think this wine will also, having drank it over the course of multiple days, it tastes awesome on day 2 if it survives that long. It probably won't for most people because it's a delicious wine. But it's very sapid. Yes, I think when you do ever have that experience where you're like, I have this kind of weird sensation or aftertaste. Honestly, I always recommend just, you can beat it up a little bit, shake it around. If it doesn't have a lot of sediment or something like that, but you can, shake it around in the glass, decant it if you feel so inclined. Wines will typically always open up, especially younger wines will open up with a bit of oxygen. You'll let some of those off flavors that you might detect. Oftentimes they will blow off.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the wine has a flaw or something like that, then obviously, if you ever aren't sure, let us know. We can always, make it right. But if it's something that just takes a little bit of time to show because it's shy, that's perfectly normal.
Just don't shake it up so much that you break the vial you shipped it over to Hawaii, and
that really took a beating.
That's the first time that's happened, actually.
It's really weird.
We shipped Jeff
little samples for the tasting, and the
tiny little
handled. Someone was trying to aerate that thing a little too hard, I think, on the way over.
At the USPS.
It's certainly not fragile or fluids that we're shipping through the disposal system. No.
It's not very much, but enough to. So, but I did get the one.
I really just, part of me when I taste these wines too, it really just takes me back to some of these spaces in France. And like, one thing we like to talk about is what we would have with this. And I just imagine like a very simple poulet with like some lemon, stuffed inside it, and just giving it like time to roast in the fat, pulling off the pieces, and
a salad, right? And a salad,
after, of course.
Oh, okay.
After, of course, yeah. And the salad after. Yeah, how about you guys? What would you?
I mean, for me, like Loire Valley cuisine, like locally, is like typically it's very classic French cuisine. Not quite as like rich and as like Burgundian, cuisine, but I would say it's kind of a breadbasket area, so you get lots of great like salad greens, lots of good vegetables.
Cheverny's famous for its cheeses.
Yes, of course. So this is I would say it's a very good cheese wine as well.
Very good with the malolactic.
But yeah, it's something again you can drink on its own, which is something that I find a lot of wines from Cheverny, a lot of Sauvignon Blanc based wines from Cheverny, they can be more on the tart side. Whereas I think that the addition of the Chardonnay and the Orbois here gives this that kind of I don't know, sort of like tempering effect for the Sauvignon Blanc to make it more approachable. It's something you can just literally sit and have a glass of, watch TV. That's what I've done with it actually.
Oh, Mike says, Panera mac and cheese. Good call.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, something just simple. Simple fare, just easy going. Yeah. So
fantastic. Well, shall we move on to
absolutely.
Allez.
So moving on to Bordeaux here. So this is a 2018 Jean-Marc Barthez. I'm not sure if it's a Barthez or Barthez. Bordeaux Rouge, Entre deux Mers. So the Entre deux Mers region, if you are familiar with what Bordeaux looks like, is between the Dordogne and the Garonne rivers. So these are they're basically not so much rivers as like tidal estuaries. So they come in. So the word mer actually in this case there's a French word mer, but this actually comes from the word mare, which means tide. So it's between the two tides is what it literally means. I think it's the largest wine growing region in the Bordeaux appellation in the Bordeaux region. So often overlooked for wines from the left bank, very famous for its Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon, and then the right bank, which is more like Merlot based wines. For those of you who are kind of familiar with the styles of wines that come from Bordeaux. So it's 50% Merlot, and then half and half on the other side, 25% Cabernet Franc, Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you were kind of looking at the label of this, you would think like, because it's a bit more of a right bank kind of wine style, softer, smoother. We really like this wine. This is you kind of look at the price point, and a lot of people think about Bordeaux and they think I think either on the one hand kind of first growth chateau, which is like super expensive, hard to get wines that go straight to collectors around the world. I mean really all over the world. Most of us will never taste one of those kinds of wines, or we might be thinking about like sort of Blanc that's kind of grown on a massive scale. But there actually are a lot of these kind of smaller family wineries, and this winemaker Jean-Marc Barthez is actually the president of a collectif, of a kind of cooperative. I think, yeah, I'm not sure if it's collective, cooperative, but basically buying grapes from other small family wineries and making the wine with it. So he gets really good. The idea is to make wine that people in the region can actually afford. So that's kind of what we're after with this one, is something really delicious from Bordeaux to capture the sense of place that we that we're working on with that region. So I mean, it's really, really good. I was just trying it for the first time tonight, but yeah, do you guys want to kind of taste through this? So we got like I mean, it's kind of classic Bordeaux blend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, really. We liked it that it's got kind of an earthy quality to it, so it's not just straight up fruit out of the glass. This wine doesn't have actually any oak on it, so it's all done in stainless steel. So a lot of times these kind of wines are oaky and
You'll hear us talk about pyrazine sometimes as well.
Yeah, there's definitely Cab Franc in there, right? So
yeah, it's a little bit of that, like that's that kind of a little bit like green, kind of a little bit of bell pepper note. But I mean, I don't go like, doesn't taste green or ripe to me. No. It's something that, like, sometimes bell pepper can be like fire roasted red pepper. You can get a little bit of that kind of like, a little bit more savory element. Yeah. I mean, some people experience pyrazine as more like just like a savory kind of like savory vegetable note. And it's something pretty typical with any of the the Merlot, Cab Franc.
Those of you guys who've tried Chinon and other Loire Valley wines, right? That's Cab Franc is, of course, one of the
if it's 100%, it really takes over.
If you really want to get kicked in the face by what we're talking about, it's actually wonderfully integrated, but it's just a different right. If you really want to get that sense experience, you can get it there.
Yeah, it's got a nice blend of like red and I think like kind of red and black fruit, like cherry, cranberry. It has a bit of a tartness to it, which I really like, and then but still gets a little bit of that like darker Cab Sauvignon, kind of blackberry, black bramble, stuff like that.
Jeff, you're kind of talking about some of the Bordeaux Blanc, that kind of TJ shelves and stuff, and when that is a place for cooking, and certainly like a lot of it.
A few of them are good.
Yeah, no, it's totally like approachable, but it doesn't have that kind of integration like what we're talking about, right? It's very much just like big, just coming on specifically with the Cabernet Sauvignon, just bam. And I think this has a sense of balance, integration, harmony.
Yeah, I think that's key too. That I mean, temperature of the wine in terms of kind of the alcohol how the alcohol is balanced with the fruit, sort of doesn't feel like either too kind of weak or too overpowering. I think that's always kind of hard to strike that just the right balance.
Yeah, I think this is like a red that is very much a like we're saying, like punches above its weight class. It's a great bistro red. This is the kind of thing that that you probably would drink in France for 2-3 euros a glass at some nameless bistro somewhere, and you'd be like, oh, this is so good, like why can't we get wines like this at home? Like this is literally that wine that people come into wine shops and they say, oh, I was in Italy or in France and I had this amazing wine, I paid 2 euros for it, and why can't I find anything like that here? Like this is that wine, because it's again like Dana's saying, or Jeff is saying, made like from at a cooperative, but this is a small production operation. This is something that is actually not produced at this mass scale like a lot of Bordeaux, like just Bordeaux Rouge or Entre deux Mer wines will be. This wine is specifically sourced by an importer named Mary Taylor, and she's kind of reviving this sort of old tradition of you could call her like a négociante. Is sort of like what the French used to call them, a merchant. It was kind of really what that translates as, kind of. But the model being that like she goes and selects the wines herself, gets the wines made, or essentially chooses the wines, and then purchases them, but puts her name on the label, which is not uncommon to do. A lot of these types of sort of négociant labels and producers will do this, but she also puts Jean-Marc's name on there. Actually, I mean, in most cases like this, you would not see Jean-Marc Barthez or Barthez on the label there for this type of wine. made in this fashion. So Mary Taylor, she's doing a fantastic job of just kind of again reviving this this tradition of well-priced, great value wines that are made by small producers once again. So she's kind of doing this this import business and also creating wines along the way.
Yeah.
So very kind of unique model that I mean, there's only a few other people kind of doing it well, I would say here, that aren't just importers. I mean, you'll see like importers like Kermit Lynch or something like that. They'll have like Kermit Lynch Coteaux or something like that. That's yeah, I mean, even then, yeah, something like that. But this importer sort of model as a producer is I think it's great to see it coming back because it has a nice tie-in. They're incentivized for quality, not just for the numbers metrics to sell pallets and pallets of wine. So yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me on the nose, again, very classic, a lot of like red fruit, a lot of just that kind of classic, a little bit of the graphite-y kind of element to it that you get from a classic Bordeaux. And honestly, for the price, it's hard not to make it a house wine. So yeah, I think I wrote this in the wine write-up, but literally steak frites is all I can think of when I taste this wine. I just want like a kind of like a hanger steak, fresh off the grill, a bunch of greasy French fries, and maybe a little like shallot butter on top there, something like that. So that's about as perfect as it gets in my mind for a wine like this. That's its spirit animal.
I can't disagree with that. I do lamb too, but along the same lines, grilled lamb.
Dana, this might shock you, but steak frite could be a lamb steak.
That's true, actually. So great minds.
Yeah, leftover ribs, says Mike Wendy. Absolutely. And Jim, thanks for the words of approval there. So we're a fan, obviously, of the Bordeaux Merlot blends as well. So we'll save some for you to include with your next order for sure.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Do you want to jump to the next one, Ryan?
Let's do it. All right. So wine number 3 is it's actually 2019. Some of you who were paying attention may have noticed that I incorrectly put it as 2020 in the write-up, which it's totally my fault that I'm guessing Jeff probably copied it out of the write-up there. So that's completely my fault. It is 2019. You all were shipped 2019, and that is the wine. I don't believe 2020 is released yet. So that was my wishful thinking, I guess, because 2020 is supposed to be a very good vintage, but so was 2019.
Hey, is this the bonus wine? This one?
This is not the bonus wine. So
no, but is this one the bonus wine?
Yes, sir. That is.
Okay, I'm gonna open it then.
Yes, go for it. So wine number 3 here so this is the Marchand-Tawse Coteaux Bourguignon. That's how you pronounce that. Bourguignon. And Gamay is the grape. This is from Burgundy. This is a really special wine made by a winemaker that's I think is one of my favorite winemakers in Burgundy. Pascal Marchand. He's originally from Quebec, but he's been in Burgundy for almost, I think, 40 years now. I think his first harvest, he was like a teenager. So yeah, he's been there. He's as Burgundian as he is anything else now. And this is a wine sourced from 2 vineyards, about 45 and 75 years old now. That are 100% Gamay. Those of you who are Burgundy fans probably know that red Burgundy is typically Pinot Noir. That doesn't mean that Gamay is some newfangled grape that they're experimenting with. It's been there for a very long time, going back potentially, I think, back to the Roman times. But in the 1370s, I believe, Philippe the Bold famously banned Gamay from Burgundy. So it was ripped up. He was one of the Dukes of Burgundy, I believe, and ripped it all up and basically banished it to a status outside of the appellation. It has since been kind of revived. You see it blended with Pinot Noir in a few select appellations, and in this case, the Coteaux Bourguignon appellation, I believe, was extended or expanded to allow you to be able to make the 100% Gamay versions, because it's something that's been more increasingly marketable and desired. So this is a wine that's, as I said, 100% Gamay. This is 100% whole cluster as well, so there's no destemming going on. That is what is going to provide some of that kind of peppery, spicy sort of character on the nose. I always get this kind of like a little bit of cracked pepper, whether it's white pepper, green pepper, black pepper. I don't know. You get a little bit of all of it kind of on the nose there. But yeah, right out of the gate, this is as Eloise is asking, similar to a Fleury. I would definitely say there are comparisons you can draw to a Cru Beaujolais, something like that. Cru Beaujolais being one of those named villages like Fleury or Morgon or Brouilly.
12.
Yeah, so there's these named parts of Beaujolais that are all Gamay that are regarded as some of the finest expressions of Gamay. This would definitely fall among them. If you place this at a Beaujolais tasting, people would definitely be fooled because it has the structure of a very high quality Gamay. The vineyards that this wine is sourced from are actually from two very famous villages in the Côte d'Or in Burgundy. One is called Vaud Romane, and the other is called Flagey et Chasselas. Vaud Romane is home to some of the Grand Crus of Burgundy, and Chasselas happens to be a Grand Cru of Burgundy. So again, the zip code here is pretty chic. This vineyard, however, is not in next to those famous vineyard sites, but it's in the same general area. It's on the other side of the train tracks, on the other side of the highway, but it is in the same zip code. So they do claim that, and it is from the same villages actually. So I have been to this vineyard here. I think it's on the. Did you put on some pictures on the next slide there, Jeff? You can pop over there. So I went to visited Marchand-Tawse many times back when I worked for the importer. But I visited this vineyard at harvest, and so you can kind of see actually in this photo here, they were out there picking. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's no vineyard to the right of it or to the left of it. It's just a bunch of rows of vines out there on a relatively flat, very, very gradually sloping, but relatively flat field.
Is that the Gamay in the actual photograph?
That is the Gamay. That's the Gamay from the vineyard there. So you can see how this was taken in 2019.
Right.
So this is taken from this wine that we are drinking right now. So I took these pictures. Those are you're drinking those grapes right now. So if you're drinking along with us,
one of the reasons that Philippe the Bold wanted to outlaw Gamay was because of the yields, right? The sheer amount of grapes that come from Gamay clusters, and then I'm seeing that right here, right? Like that's
that you can see on these grapes in this site especially. So this is again flat, like alluvial soils here, rich soils. This is like grown. You can look behind. You can't really see in this photo, but there's fields of like non-grape crops and agricultural products grown in this area because it's richer soil. So when you plant Gamay in there, you're going to get very high yields. You're going to get rich, these rich soils producing a ton of grapes. And so what they have to do is they have to drop a lot of fruit. They go through multiple times during the season and they do thinning, and they will drop 20, 30, 40% of the fruit when it's still green on the vine, so as to allow the fruit to actually concentrate its flavors more, and to be able to actually provide a wine that has a lot of character. I think I really like this wine a lot too. Thanks, Eloise. Good to know you like it as well. But I think this is a wine that, again, it really can kind of change perceptions about what Burgundy can be.
Yeah.
I think I said this about the Bordeaux, but punching above the weight class is a term I kind of use a lot. But there are wines that are Pinot Noir based Burgundies that taste similar to this wine that cost two or three times as much. Because with Gamay, obviously you get this concentration of fruit, you get a bit more of this kind of intensity, I guess you might say, just right out of the gate. So is it a wine that would age necessarily as long as a structured Burgundy from red Burgundy from up the hill? Not necessarily. I think this wine's tasting really, really well right now. Also definitely would continue to improve for another 2, 3, 4 years probably, before I would say it'll probably plateau and stay tasting really nice for a couple years before starting to show its age a bit. But a very very nice, just kind of, again, not a new kid on the block as far as the grape, but as the appellation, yes. So something you don't see it here very often. Jim mentions that the locals in the area joke that the 3 rivers flowing the Léon or into Lyon are the Rhone, the Saône, and Beaujolais. It's totally true. I heard that joke when I was in Lyon. I heard it actually from two different people, and I had to laugh both times. So it's yeah, but this is I think again, like it's a wine that's shows a lot of that kind of blue and black fruit, a lot of that kind of blueberry and blackberry just like kind of bursting out there on the palate.
Let me jump back to something you said before, because we were talking about, I mean, one of the things that you see oftentimes in Beaujolais, right, so with Gamay is whole cluster. We're talking carbonic maceration, and this is whole cluster,
but no carbonic.
no carbonic, right? Which again is fermentation within the grape itself, right?
Yeah,
Where it's
it's
sitting and pressing down on itself,
Right. That's,
Yeah. Which gives, which is very different than what you might find from some Beaujolais.
This is made like Burgundy. I mean,
Yeah.
So in Burgundy, they wouldn't do carbonic for
Yeah.
Pinot Noir and that sort of thing. They very rarely would you ever see that. But this is made. They treat this just like their Burgundy, and they farm it the same way too.
So there's a difference for you, Eloise, right, in terms of grapes and styles as well that you might be picking up on. So
Yeah, but it's I think it's just like again for a classic but new take on a classic. I think it's really stellar.
the club we were kind of talking about this, kind of going back to the roots and finding, right, like being revolutionary by kind of getting back. And I think I came across something, and fact check me here too, but Gamay I think actually takes its name from a village in Burgundy.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Same as Chardonnay.
and same as Chardonnay. Yeah. So I mean, so kicking out Gamay is right.
Yeah.
We're all about kind of digging up the roots here. So so it's very appropriate.
That is what it's all about. So yeah. I think that kind of covers this one. I think again it's
Pairings. Jeff, what would you?
pairings. Jeff, let's hear some of your pairings for
Jeff,
this.
what would you have this with?
Yeah, I mean, I think like duck breast would be super good with this. I mean, it's the kind of wine I feel like good Gamay goes with just about anything. It's really easy to drink on its own. But I mean, you could put this with pizza pretty easily as well, I think.
Yeah.
Really
So,
good.
Yeah, there's a little of that kind of earthy, savory edge that I get on the nose. Like as we spend a little more time with it.
do venison with gooseberry, like
Do you have some? That sounds amazing.
yeah, and cracked pepper and venison or something.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It has
I really love it. It's
much
really
more refined nose than a lot of people's first experience with Gamay is probably Beaujolais Nouveau. Beaujolais Nouveau being this expression of Gamay made in Beaujolais. It's the grapes are picked, they're basically rushed through fermentation to get them done by it's by the third Thursday of November. I can't even know, second Thursday of November. It's Beaujolais Nouveau Day. I don't even remember. I never really drink stuff that, to be honest, so I don't really partake, but it unfortunately serves to tarnish the reputation of Beaujolais. People see Beaujolais on a label and they get scared. They go, I don't know about that. It's probably just going to taste like bubblegum candies and get me really drunk and have a horrible hangover. That's the true for a lot of like the Beaujolais Nouveaux that you get, but then
It's what you want to drink after harvest, right? Like you've been in the fields all day, like that's what you want.
yeah, that's some ice cubes in there or something like that. But Gamay, the grape, then gets kind of lumped in, and unfortunately people think, oh, it's just this kind of simple plonk. It doesn't really have much capacity for complexity, and which is not the case. So I think it's in I don't know if we've done a Cru Beaujolais in the past.
I thought we did.
We may have done one.
Not Cru. We did a couple of.
Well, we should definitely find a good excuse to expose folks, so like a fleury, like Eloise mentioned, or like one of these crews of Beaujolais, one of these villages, because actually that's in there going as well, and expose folks to
That'd be fun.
the magic of
That'd be
Beaujolais.
fun. I think we'll do it as a special order because we can't afford it. Otherwise,
There's some that are
That's some good
reasonable.
stuff.
Yeah,
We-
some price to this. Yeah.
There are a lot of wonderful producers, young producers that have now become very established that we used to kind of hang out with in the Bay Area. They'd come through 20s, 30s, and some events that we definitely Ubered home, and left our cars abandoned in the city.
Yeah.
And now they've become quite established, and Pierre Coton and
Beaujolais is a whole thing.
world.
There's a whole generation of cool young winemakers
Very
coming up
cool
there.
stuff. Yeah.
Same as in Burgundy, but
Yeah.
it is technically part of Burgundy.
Oh, we did actually. I know. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting. I did not know that.
Well, we're ready to move on to the next wine there. All right, so special offer wine number 1. So again, some of you took part in some of these awesome wines from Switzerland. So these are wines that we actually are sourcing from. Basically, it's two young guys, like kind of similar sort of boat to us. Like they have a love for Swiss wine, and it's part of their family. They have family roots going back there, and kind of just haphazardly bumped into these young guys, and they're like, yeah, we just do Swiss wine. And so, of course, I'm thinking, wow, how are we going to possibly fit in Swiss wine into ancient history? It's a little bit out of our typical geography. And then, of course, we started talking about this Celtic Origins Club, and of course, the Helvetii are originated from this part of Switzerland. So, I mean, this is it. Just kind of was kismet that it sort of worked out that way.
It was the yodeling that really like heated in.
That really sealed it for you, I'm sure. Yeah. But so this is a wine made from the most planted white grape of Switzerland, Chasselas. And the 2020 Cab de la Côte Chasselas from Vaud, in western Switzerland. And so again, for those of you who do have this wine, this is a classic, very typical Chasselas from Switzerland. You get that again, like we're talking about with the Cheverny, you get a little bit of that like kind of like gras, that texture on the palate, a little bit that kind of sort of sapidity, but a little more of this kind of like for lack of a better word, like mountain spring water, sort of kind of crystalline minerality, acidity to it. I mean, the picture of the Matterhorn on the front, is it the Matterhorn? Yeah, it's the Matterhorn. On the front there.
I only know that from Disneyland. I'm like,
I'm actually guessing. Maybe I honestly don't know. I think it is, but I'm not sure. But the picture of the mountain on the front might be biasing me a little bit. But yes, the style here is this kind of like, again, like a medium bodied white wine, a lot of flavors of that kind of like green apple, peaches, pears, a really lovely spring, summer, fall wine, but also again, we're talking about Switzerland, fondue. This is a wine that is basically designed for fondue. This is what they're splashing into there in for the recipe, and then they're guzzling it down. And when I say guzzling, I mean that in the best of ways, because a lot of times we don't get Swiss wines here in this country. That's one of the reasons why when I bumped into these guys, I was like, oh crap, we got to do something, because it's not easy to find. I have been in the wine business long enough looking for these wines that when the opportunity came up, I jumped on it, because the Swiss drink a ton of their own wine. They don't drink outside of their country that often. They are similar to where like Portugal was maybe like 10, 15, 20 years ago. They are the largest consumer of their own wine. They don't really export it much. And the Swiss franc is actually obviously a very strong currency. And so importing wines outside of Switzerland, to places that already have wine, they're like, the value is not so good. A lot of wines typically retailed, in my experience, starting at $30 retail. And so it was very hard to find a good classic expression of the wines that didn't start to go, hey, I could probably get a local wine or a French wine or an Italian or anything else, for a similar quality sometimes, but for a little bit less. But this is a wine that I was so excited that we were able to offer for this price, because it's good. It's a great entry point into what a good classic Swiss Chasselas tastes like. Yeah, I think this is actually made at a cooperative as well in western Switzerland, pretty close to the French border actually. This is very close to Lac Léman or Lake Geneva, and the views. I highly recommend you either right now or after Google Vineyards Lake Geneva, because some of the images they'll make your eyes water with how much you want to go there and just go sit and drink by this beautiful pristine alpine lake. I mean, it's incredible. I'm sure if we get to go there, it's going to be hard to get us out of there. But just in terms of like the wine and the food and everything like that, during my research of this wine, I was like, well, maybe we'll go there for the next trip. So it was exciting. Yeah. So I think that again, this is a wine that's if you haven't ever had a Swiss wine, this is a great entry point on the white side. Switzerland also has a big range of other native varieties that are Fondant and Haida are they're kind of actually some of these other varieties that you see in very small quantities that I'm hoping to get in some of these kind of rare native varieties from these guys as well. But watch this space, is all I'm going to say. I think I'll try to do a Swiss wine special offer or something like that coming up here as well. In a couple weeks, I think we might have something else to share with you.
Well, speaking of some of those varietals and crossovers, that's a really good segue into number 2, which is our second Swiss wine. And why don't you tell us a little bit about this one?
Absolutely. So, yep, absolutely. Let's move around. So, wine number 2, also from Switzerland, as I was saying. This is made from 2 varieties, Gamay and Garanois. They are actually they're clonally, they're cousins, they're cousin varieties, but they are actually related to the Gamay grape. They're designed by crossing Gamay with Reichensteiner, which is I believe it's a German or Austrian white variety. But the Garanois giving the kind of this like structure, the Gamay giving this lift. You get a wine that, first of all, you can just see in the glass, like it's dark, like it has an intensity to the color that is darker than any of the other 2 reds of the night. And I think that's something that I think is just fun just from the get-go. A lot of people don't think of Switzerland as making dark red wines. The most planted grape there is Pinot Noir. So this is something that immediately stood out to me, on the wine side. And of course, for us as ancient wine guys, mythology, history, having a wine from Domaine du Centaure called Legende with a unicorn on the label. I mean, that was actually pretty compelling, I have to say. It ticked a lot of boxes on the marketing front for us as well. So when I tasted the wine, and I love this like deep complexity that I was seeing from these 2 varieties, it just made sense. I just had to have it for this club. Located also in Vaud in western Switzerland. Again, this is made to be a kind of like a wine that can age for a long time. They're telling me that they have wines going back, this wine going back to like the 90s. It's something that can, you can lay it down, but if you're drinking it now, give it some air, let it some time to breathe, because it has those kind of like, big, powerful nose. You get almost a little bit of this kind of like Cabernet Sauvignon sort of spices to it, a lot of that structure.
There's that baking spice kind of like. Jeff, you want to walk us through a tasting of this one?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tried it before, but everything you're saying, I agree with so far.
I actually had this with a friend 2 nights ago, and we did like a beef bourguignon, and it was just the carrots and like it was awesome. Really, really, really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, just the intensity of the color is pretty striking. I mean, there aren't that many wines. We've had some of those Georgian wines that are incredibly deep like this, like the almost black in color. Like can't see it through it at all. It's kind of crazy.
This is almost like carrot, turmeric, kind of cinnamon.
Yeah, it's got a lot of interesting spices in it.
Yeah, a lot of it kind of like earthy,
cardamom, maybe.
Yep.
Cardamom is a good call.
Yeah, and I think there's like, for me, there's like, that spice alongside those like dark kind of like melted blackberry, kind of blueberry plum sort of flavors. It really takes me to fall. I really was like, when I was tasting this wine, I was like, oh, this is gonna be perfect, perfect Thanksgiving wine, something, you plop down at the table. People are gonna be like, what the hell is that? And you can say, oh, it's from Switzerland, it's from my wine club. Yeah, like that was kind of like what I was imagining, fantasizing about for folks when we were putting in the order there. And so, yeah, I mean, it texture wise, like I would definitely say it's like a fuller bodied style. Again, surprising from Switzerland. It gets hot in Switzerland. I mean, this is from a vintage 2020 that there was a lot of sunshine. They had a lot of long sunny days there. And so, I mean, yeah, people think of Switzerland as all being like snow and mountains, but in the wine growing region, it can get very warm. So they do actually have to, but by the lake here, they do have this mitigating effect of the lake cooling effect. So it keeps that brightness and the acidity and the verve to the wine as well.
The Jet d'eau helps too, right? It kind of cools. No, just joking. Geneva jokes. Yeah, I love this one. I absolutely. Jeff, what would you have with this?
I mean, something grilled meats. I think first thing that pops through my mind. Hamburgers.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't know if that's the way to spend $47, but it definitely is.
I would tuck this away at the end of Thanksgiving and have
Steak,
like,
a really nice steak obviously would go really well with this. Maybe some kebabs, like beef kebabs.
Mhm.
I think the grill, something grilled seems to kind of,
Yeah, going along with that sort of savory spice.
yeah.
Absolutely.
This spice, maybe dress it up with some marinate something.
Yeah.
And I think mine's a little bit tight still, so I'm trying to get kind of the air into it.
Yeah, definitely something that, again, decanting.
Yeah.
Time, let it sit in the glass, like don't rush it. I mean, I think that's something that actually for all four of these wines, or five of these wines, well, four of these wines, I would say the Chasselas is more of kind of like you can kind of crack that one open and just kind of get to it. But the remaining four, I really think they're all going to benefit from extra oxygen, from opening up a bit. And this wine also tasted really nicely on day 2 for me as well.
Yeah, I'm sure it's better. Yeah.
And, I actually stuck it in the fridge, which I often will do sometimes when I have a sample and I'm not sure when I'm going to taste it next. I stuck it in the fridge and I drank it a little bit, not cold, but a little bit chilled the next day. And it was really nice. I really liked, for me, I don't mind a little more like tartness, a little more of that kind of pinch on the palate. And I like that it brought that out. But as it warms up, it kind of softens and loosens up and becomes more, more of that kind of like silky texture on the palate as well. So
it comes out. I mean, at the beginning, it's very tannic, but it sort of softens up for sure. Already mine's softening up. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, like for me, a great food wine, something that it does coat the palate a bit. So yeah, I'll be excited to hear what folks think of this wine near term, and if anyone happens to squirrel one away, maybe this time next year, someone tells me what their thoughts of it. I'll be extremely curious. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the tasting. I know so. As always, thank you everybody for joining us. If you'd like to order any additional quantities of the wines from this club or any past clubs, you can always send us an email, reach out. One thing that I'm hoping to have launched and available in hopefully the next couple weeks to next month is a small portion of our site that will be dedicated to a little retail shop. So wines that you've loved from the past, you'll see on there. Wines that we're kind of figuring out the logistics of it, but we'd love to be able to have folks purchase wines a little bit a la carte, at least ones that we have in stock, and or purchase past clubs as gifts for people. Say, hey, can I send them like wines of the Etruscans, or wines of Herod the Great, or some of our favorite past clubs, that whatever we actually have in stock, that we can send.
Christmas is coming. That's what he's trying to say, everybody. We're here for you.
What's gifting? Holiday season? No idea what we're talking about, Dana. But this is something to keep an eye out for. We'll make an announcement via email, so something you can check out. And shipping for it would be very simple. We can always include it with your next club, or we'll probably have some sort of scheme where if it hits a certain number, we can ship it for you within X number of days. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But stay tuned for that. And shipping is free to California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and $5 a bottle to all the other states. So I think all of you stay up to date with us pretty well on our various media channels. So no need for the reminder there, but I just thank you all again.
Yeah, really so nice to be spending the evening with all of you guys. I'd say a show of hands for those of you who are going to join us in Greece. Keep your eyes open for that as well. Oh, great. I saw a couple of hands coming up. Yeah. Okay. Wonderful. Fantastic. Members get first pick. So we're excited, very excited about that. And maybe Geneva.
Maybe. Maybe. We flew through
Geneva
Zurich.
2025. Yeah.
We flew through Zurich on our way to Greece in this March. And I remember sitting there, we were out there looking at the mountains. I was like,
Maktub, ya habibi, it's meant to
there's
be.
probably some damn good wine out there. Yeah. Yeah.